أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أم حسبتم أن تدخلوا الجنة ولما يعلم الله الذين جاهدوا منكم ويعلم الصابرين صدق الله العلي العظيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين سيما بقية الله في الأرضين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. Assalamu alaikum to everybody and thank you for joining us again tonight. Alhamdulillah, if it is night time for you wherever you are, inshallah. We've been discussing a lot of interesting things, and I believe in not the session, yesterday's session, but the session before that, we touched upon the idea that those who we think are going to Jannah, the right people, the good people, the righteous people, are not necessarily those that we think of as Shia. And there are numerous verses which allude to this idea that human beings have divided themselves into all sorts of groups and categories. Some say that they're Sunni, some say that they're Shia, some say that they're Zaydi, etc., etc. And every one of these groups, they are essentially celebrating. They're all happy. They're all rejoicing at whatever they have. And when it says about the Christians and the Jews, it says that they have a certain mentality. For example, the Christians say that only we will go to Jannah. The Jews say only we will go to Jannah. If we as Muslims have the same mentality, i.e., thinking that we are the ones who are going to go to Jannah and others are going to perish, well, that means that we're going to be raised with the Jews or the Christians because our mentality is not an Islamic mentality. The Quran doesn't necessarily say that only Muslims will go to Jannah. And this is a really interesting point, and it illustrates the idea that we should really start to go back to the Quran and start basing our understanding, our beliefs on what the Quran itself is saying, not what our preconceived ideas are. And so one of the prominent themes in the Quran is the theme of taqwa. Taqwa. What does the Quran tell us? In Surah Baqarah, in fact, in the initial verses, it tells us, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. This is the book about which there is no doubt, and it is a guidance for who? Does Allah say it is hudan lil Muslimin? Does he say hudan lil Shia? Does he say hudan lil Sunnah? Or any of the other groups? No, he says hudan lil muttaqeen, those who have taqwa. The Quran is a book of guidance for who, dear brothers and sisters? That's right, people who have taqwa. Now, what is taqwa? What does it really mean? Well, it's translated as those who fear God, those who are God conscious. And essentially, what it means is that a person has a feeling within their heart that prevents them from committing sins at a very, very low level. That's what it means to not commit sins, to refrain from that which you believe will make Allah upset with you or angry with you or bring down Allah's wrath, God forbid. Okay, so I want you to think of an example now. Let's say that there is a room, and inside that room, maybe it's a bank vault, and there's a chest full of gold coins. Somebody enters, their name is Iqbal. they're a Muslim, and they are told that we're going to switch off the cameras for 30 minutes. And you can do whatever you like. And they realize that they can do whatever they like. Nobody is going to catch them. Let's say that Iqbal steals that gold and leaves. Did he have taqwa? At the same time, let's say that a non-Muslim, let's say a Christian or a Hindu even, they enter the room. They know that all the cameras are switched off, the guards have gone to sleep, and they have a golden opportunity to steal the gold. But they choose not to. This person has taqwa. And I want to emphasize this point that sometimes even those who claim to be atheists or agnostics, those who reject the very notion of God himself, with their tongues, sometimes they might even have more taqwa than those who profess to be the most pious of Muslims. And this all ties into the Day of Judgment. Again, as we said before, the Day of Judgment is essentially daytime. Everything will be revealed. The sun, which is the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will be raised. And at that time, nobody will be able to hide who they truly are, what they truly believe in. Right now, we're living in a very dark realm, a realm where people's true identities can be concealed. Subhanallah, if you really think about it, I was thinking about it just today, that in this world there might be people who are good looking, who are wealthy, who have many good things and traits. In the next world, it might be the total opposite. Those ugly people who are ugly in this dunya will be revealed to be the most beautiful people. The poor people in this dunya will be revealed to be the most richest of people. The people who have beautiful singing voices in this dunya, but they use those singing voices to attract people towards vain and haram acts and materialism. In that world, they might have the ugliest of voices, like the donkey. The Quran actually says the ugliest of voices or sounds is the Sawtul Hamir, the sound of the donkey. You know, so everything becomes reversed over there. Now, those who are muttaqi, those who are God conscious in this world, their true forms over there may be that of a true human. Imam Khomeini talks about this in his books in a spiritual light, in Adab al-Salat, in 40 Hadith, for example. He talks about how in that world, there are many people, human beings, that you walk with, you talk with, you breathe the same. It says that وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَل لَّهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. And one who who has taqwa in regards to Allah, Allah will always find a way out for them, and He will provide for them through a means that they do not recognize or know, right? Or they don't count upon. I mean, subhanallah, this is a subject that requires us to really go back and reflect, go to the Quran, see what it tells us about those who are truly God conscious. And so I wanted to elaborate on this a little bit today, inshallah, and go into the idea of taqwa itself and how we can build that taqwa relating to Allah. Why do I want to go into this subject? Because if you look at the world, you're going to notice that there are certain people who are truly being impacted by the Holy Quran. Just go online and see how many videos there are of non-Muslims, maybe even women who aren't even wearing hijab, white women, black women, non-Muslim women who come from all sorts of different backgrounds, cultures, and creeds, They are opening the Quran, they are reading it, and some of them burst into tears. Some of them get so profoundly impacted just by listening to the Quran that they start to cry. And the Quran itself actually tells us this, that there are some sincere people among the Christians, for example, who, when they hear the verses of the Quran, their eyes become overwhelmed with tears. Never underestimate the power of tears. There is a reason, dear brothers and sisters, why our creed in particular, the Shia madhab, has taught us at least once a year to shed tears for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Very soon, the days of the martyrdom of Imam Ali alayhi salam are coming, and we're going to be crying again. What is all this crying? Well, first of all, it has a good impact on the soul, in which, there's lots of pent up emotions and pain that Allah knows is in our hearts. And so when we actually cry, we release a lot of those spiritual toxins, so to speak. And so it's a very important thing from that aspect as well. But I've actually read a hadith in this regard, which are quite scary, actually. And they say, for example, if your eyes become dry and you're not crying anymore, this is a very, very bad sign. And what it essentially means is that your heart has become hardened. Now, I didn't take this hadith very seriously, or this concept very seriously, until I saw it, unfortunately, in certain youths who I was talking to. And one of them, I talked to a lot of youths about these issues, and one of them, a couple of years ago, told me that he just doesn't cry ever. Like, he never ever cries. And I told him this could possibly be a really bad sign. And he was like, no, no, I'm really manly. You know, a couple of years down the line, though, it's very sad and unfortunate, but that brother's, completely gone astray now. And so this is something that you need to analyze about yourself. Why are you not crying? There's a hadith, especially in the era that we are living in right now, which is, have no doubts about it, Akhirud Zaman, and the Zuhur is very close, inshallah. There's a hadith which says that at this time, the eyes of the believers will be full of tears. They will be crying much, not just because of Imam Hussein alayhi salam or the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, but simply because of the overwhelming atmosphere that we now find ourselves in, because of the situation that we are inevitably surrounded by, because we can all innately and inherently feel that there is a need for a great change in the world. And we are waiting for that change with such anticipation that it overwhelms us with emotions. Now, one of the ways that we should be able to unlock those tears and an emotional response is through the Quran. Now, we have to ask ourselves, if the Quran is not having an emotional effect on us, if when we open it, we are reading it and then we just walk away completely blank, it's not making us cry, it's not making us laugh, what's going on? There's something very wrong with us. وَأَنَّهُ هُوَ أَضْحَكَ وَأَبْكَى. The Quran tells us, and surely it is He who makes us laugh and makes us cry. And we have to ask ourselves, why are we not laughing when Allah tells us something? Sometimes we should pick up on certain messages that Allah is giving us, and it should actually make us laugh. It should make us laugh because we're like, whoa, how did He know that? And of course the answer is that He's Allah. That's why He knows. How is it not impacting us? Why is it not making us cry? Well, one reason is that taqwa. Hudan lil muttaqeen. It is a guidance for those who have taqwa. And so let's dive in now and look at what taqwa really is and try to actually analyze within our own lives. Where does this taqwa apply? How do we gain this taqwa in order for the Quran to be a guide for us? First of all, I'd like to say this. Many of the people who are impacted by the Quran are those who have suffered. Okay. In fact, I would argue the more somebody has suffered in life, the more the Quran is going to speak to their hearts. Why? Because there are too many people in the Muslim world and the Shia community, who really haven't experienced any kind of suffering. Why are we fasting right now, dear brothers and sisters? One of the wisdoms behind fasting is what? Why do we do it? One of them is, incidentally, so that you can have taqwa. The Quran tells us, right? We have ascribed or appointed or ordained fasting for you. Why? So that you can get healthy, so that you can get fit, so that you can get all sorts of things. Yes, definitely. There's all sorts of perks to fasting, but one of them is so that you can have taqwa, gain taqwa. If you go to Imam Rida alayhi salam, he says one of the reasons why fasting has been prescribed is so that the rich can feel the pain of the poor. There are too many people in the world who have never, ever, just think about that, they've never felt hunger, ever. And so even if they skip a lunch, it's like a huge thing for them. It's like, oh my God, dieting is very, very difficult for them because they don't know what hunger really is. They've never felt the hunger pangs or the hunger pain. Now, imagine a person like that. When somebody tells them that they're hungry, when they see that there are poor people in the streets, when they see that there are homeless people, is it going to impact them the same way as somebody who has experienced the pain? And therefore, it ties in with the concept of taqwa, because taqwa is essentially something which is going to make you feel the pain of not only the poor, but the pain of God. What do I mean, the pain of God? Allah doesn't feel pain. Well, what I mean is when you feel the frustration, astaghfirullah, the frustration of God, the pain of God, when he is complaining about humanity, when he's saying, look at the poor people, when he's telling you, go and feed them. What does Surah Yasin tell us? When you tell them to feed the poor, they have a certain attitude. What is that attitude? They say, why should we feed someone who, if Allah had willed, he could have fed himself? And they're right. Allah could have fed those poor people. But the point is that Allah has told us, He's given us the opportunity to do His bidding on earth. And instead of doing His bidding, instead of spreading that mercy, that justice, that kindness, that charity, instead of doing that, we just take whatever we have, we are greedy with it, we don't let go of it, we hold on to whatever small petty dunya we have, and we're not ready to part from it in any way in order to serve God. This comes back to taqwa. Why do people in the community have such a mentality? And I'm sure when I said this, that many of you are realizing that there are many people in the community. And when I say the community, it's Muslims, those who were given the Quran. Even they have this kind of a mentality. This, when we have these kinds of thoughts in our heads, and when we don't build up that taqwa, that God consciousness through the pain, through experiencing pain, how is the Quran going to speak to us? How is the Quran going to ever impact us in an emotional way? And I really, really want to highlight this point because I'm seeing it more and more now. A lot of my friends, especially recently, have been Christians who are reading the Quran. There's one Christian brother that I know. He's not even Muslim yet, but he's started to fast. I'm like, wait, what do you mean you started to fast? And he's actually not drinking. He didn't realize that he's not supposed to drink water. So the first day or the second day, he was drinking water. And then somebody told him that you're not supposed to drink water ever. And he was like, what? So now he's trying to do it without drinking water too. Look how much progress they make. In a short amount of space, look at how much progress people make. Why are they able to make such leaps and bounds in their spirituality while we who were born as Shia Muslims are not? Why? Well, one of the reasons is taqwa. If you go into those people's lives and you analyze what's different about this person, it goes back to that analogy of the room, of the bank vault. If they were given the opportunity to steal gold, would they do it, knowing full well that they wouldn't be caught? They're trustworthy people. They're people who comes from all different backgrounds. Again, and yet, Allah has inspired taqwa in their hearts. Now, I mentioned it could even apply to atheists, and I want to give you a personal example from my own life. And this is an example which was a turning point in my life. It really changed the way that I saw a lot of things. It was back when I was in the UK and I was a university student. I was in the University of Kent in Canterbury, and I saw some Muslim brothers, and they were handing out leaflets outside of the university masjid, right? And they were handing out leaflets about Islam. This is what Islam is. They were doing da'wah, and I thought this was a brilliant thing. And I said, "Hey, assalamu alaikum. You guys are handing out leaflets? Let me help." And they were like, "Sure, brother, come." And then I was taking the leaflets. I was like, "Come to Islam. You know, your life is a lie. You know, come and accept the true word of God, etc., etc." And it was a great experience. I love doing things like that. And this is another thing that I want to emphasize to you guys. What is your purpose in the West? If you're in the West or even the East, what is your purpose? If you truly are ambassadors of Islam, then you need to learn Islam and you need to teach Islam. You need to preach the word. وَمَنْ أَحْسَنَ, the Quran says, who is better than one who says, I am a Muslim, and invites towards Islam, right? So when you are reading the Quran and you stumble across this verse, by the way, and it tells you there is nobody pretty much better than one who says, I am a Muslim and I'm inviting you towards Islam. It should impact you to the point where you're like, you know what? I want to be among those good people. But for many people, it doesn't impact them in that way. This deen is my deen. Yours is yours. And we have no fear. If we believed in the hellfire, dear brothers and sisters, we would never rest a night without trying to save people from that hellfire. We would try to pull people and attract people towards the right path as much as possible, but we don't. And I have to point this out, dear brothers and sisters. The seerah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was this seerah of mercy, path of mercy, to go out to the people, to invite them towards the right path, to preach. He would first and foremostly preach to the poor people, to his own family, his own tribe, who were the rich people, yes, but to his poor people, to the youths. If you look at the majority of the scholars in the Shia world, especially today, is that what they are doing? Or no, are they going to the Shia community and preaching Shia things to them, just reaffirming their own faith? This is not the way of Islam, really. This is not the way it was ever supposed to be. We were supposed to be ambassadors of Islam, going out to people and speaking the truth to them. We criticize the Jehovah's Witnesses for knocking on our doors and talking to us about our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. But actually, they're doing a good thing. You know, Allah might actually reward them for that. Then there was this one guy who comes over. He was an agnostic guy, didn't believe in God, and he started to argue with me. And then I was like, listen, your whole perception about God is completely wrong. God is not this man who is in the clouds, you know, who has a big beard. He is not a physical thing, because physical things have limitations. Allah is everywhere. وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلٍ وَرِيدٍ. He is closer to you, the Quran says, than your life vein, your jugular vein. He is within your very veins. He is within your blood. He is closer to you than your very thoughts. He is omnipresent, etc., etc. And he was listening. One of the brothers from the stall, he comes up to me and he says, "Hey, what are you saying? What are you saying?" And I said, "Oh, nothing. I'm just explaining to him about Allah, about the concept of God, and how he's everywhere and omnipresent and etc." And he says, "No, what you're saying is wrong. Stop it." And he went back to his stall, and I was a little bit shocked, and I was like, "Wait, what?" That was weird. Anyway, and I carried on talking to the agnostic guy. And then when I carried on, and then I read to him Surah Tawheed, and I said, "Qul huwallahu ahad, Allahu samad," and so on. The guy heard, and he came over, and he was like, "Hey, what are you saying?" I'm saying, "No, I'm just explaining God to him." And he was like, "No, no, no, you're saying it wrong." And I was like, what do you mean I'm saying it wrong?" And he said, "There's a hadith from." It's embarrassing for me to say this to you guys, but this is what happened. He said, there is a hadith that a woman came to the Prophet and said, "God is up there." And she pointed to the heavens. And I just stared at him, waiting for him to say something. I was like, "So what's your point?" And he said, "If he's up there, how can he be down here?" And I was like, "Oh my God, is this seriously happening?" And I started to argue with this brother, and he got so angry. Literally, his nose was almost touching mine. His mouth was foaming, and I was just confused and angry at the same time, but more confused. And I wanted to just calm down the situation because there's all these non-Muslims walking past the masjid, and they're seeing two Muslims yelling at each other's faces, and it was just pure embarrassment. And I was like, "Okay, I can't." And he was like, "Oh, you're a kafir. You're a Shia, aren't you? You're a kafir." And I was like, "What?" So he walked away calling me a kafir. This agnostic pointed to me and said, "You are an enlightened brother." And he walked away. And that, my dear brothers and sisters, was a moment that actually changed my life, because you had somebody who I considered a brother, a Muslim, calling me a kafir and walking away. And then you had an agnostic, somebody who I thought was complete kafir himself, calling me an enlightened brother and walking away. And I was just like dazed. And I was like, whoa, what just happened? This brother, the agnostic brother, I don't know him. I didn't keep his contact details or anything, but he is probably going to be Muslim by now. All right. There's a high chance that he'll probably be a Muslim, just like so many others. This guy who's probably gone and joined ISIS and probably, dead or something, hopefully. Or maybe Allah guided him. Allah knows best, right? But the point is, you have to understand that from a Shia perspective, it might be very easy for us to judge this Takfiri Wahhabi and be like, "Oh, these Takfiris, they're just so dumb." Well, many of the diseases that they have, we may also have, right? The reason why we are not being impacted by the Quran, while this agnostic brother may be being impacted by the Quran, is the same reason, and that is taqwa. True taqwa is not only refraining from sins, but like external sins. It's refraining from internal sins also. Imam Khomeini says something really, really beautiful. He says that, look, how do you, like, what is hypocrisy? What really is nifaq, this idea of hypocrisy? Essentially, what it is when a person has a certain internal state, but externally they're presenting something else. And he says that your internal and your external states should be the same. They should be the one. So that which you project, that which you show on your face, on your clothing, on yourself, whatever it is, it should be an accurate representation of what lies beneath, what lies within. You should not try to put up a front, try to deceive people, or try to pretend that you are something that you are not. And this is a recurring problem that we see in the Muslim world, especially among the religious crowd, where many people, they will put on a front of being religious. They'll put on a front of being ultra pious, ultra knowledgeable, when they're not. They have no idea what the deen is. They have no idea what the Quran says, what the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam said, what the Holy Prophet said. So their knowledge is actually flawed. And on top of it, their internal state is awful. They have evil thoughts about everybody around them. They have grudges. They hate everyone. They despise everybody else, and they believe themselves to be the best of all people on earth. On top of it, they're never questioning themselves. There's a state that we're supposed to reach, and inshallah, this Ramadan will reach that state where you're supposed to be between khawf wa raja, between fear and hope. What does this mean, remaining between fear and hope? You see, there are some people who have just fear. They're always afraid that they are going to go to hell. And there's some people who have so much hope that they believe that it doesn't matter what sins I commit, I'm going to go to Jannah either way. And both of these are wrong. Both of these are wrong. And we have to develop our fear and our hope and do this through constantly questioning ourselves. And I have to point this out. I feel like a massive, massive hypocrite for saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. It is the hadith of the Imams alayhimussalam, where they say that, look, one who does not do etc., etc., then at the end of the day, a person should actually analyze. They should open up their journal, for example. Yeah, I'm telling the hadith now. So the idea is that there's muhasabah. I'm gonna come back to the hadith in a moment. So at the end of the day, you should do muhasabah, which is where you open up your journal, for example. Okay, okay, okay. So I'm gonna repeat the hadith. All right, guys, all right. Where you have to at the beginning of the day make a firm conviction to, for example, read all your prayers on time, pray all your prayers on time. You're going to not do backbiting. You're not going to do sins, etc., etc. And at the end of the day, you open up your journal and, for example, and you say, "Oh Allah, this is what I've done. This is what I haven't done. I committed this sin and that sin today, and inshallah I do istighfar for it, and I won't do that again." One very quick tip that I give to people is to do that while you're brushing your teeth, right? You're not always going to have time to open up a journal or even take notes in your phone. It's very good if you are able to do that, but everybody's going to brush their teeth at the end of the day, right? So while you're brushing your teeth, and probably you're looking in the mirror as you're doing it, just be like, my God, I shouldn't have shouted at that guy today. My God, please forgive me. I shouldn't have done ghibah about such and such person. And just recount for yourself your sins. Okay, so there's two hadith that I want to state in this regard. One, who the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us that one who does hisab for themselves will be spared from the hisab on the Day of Judgment. So one who accounts for themselves, right? That's hisab, to do account. They account for themselves in this world. They will be spared from that in the Day of Judgment. One of the points of the Day of Judgment is to make us aware of just how far from the right path we strayed and how evil we became. Now, if we realize that inside ourselves at the end of the day, before we sleep, then we're going to realize it, and the purpose will have been served. And through realization of that, we will inevitably do istighfar for it. So that's the first hadith about taking hisab. And of course, this is going to help us build up our taqwa. And the other hadith is a very scary hadith, and this is the hadith which I feel like a hypocrite for saying, and I have to state that before telling you, because the Ahlul alayhimus salam, they taught us that one who doesn't do muhasibah at the end of the day, right? He doesn't take account of himself at the end of the day. He's not us. He's one of us. Not a Shia, as much as he might call himself a Shia. He's not going to be with him. That's really scary, guys. Really, really terrifying. And so one of these things that we need to do is constantly be putting ourselves under question. And this will drag us to having this constant khawf wa rija, this constant fear and hope. And there's a beautiful hadith in this regard. Really, really beautiful. The Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi wasallam said, one should have so much fear that if on the day of judgment he finds out that everybody is going to go to Jannah except for one person, he thinks to himself, maybe that one person could be me. At the same time, simultaneously, a person should have so much hope that if he finds out on the day of judgment that everybody is going to go to hell, but there's only one person who's going to go to Jannah, he should think maybe there's a chance it could be me. Does that not bring tears to your eyes? I mean, there's no limitation to how much depth this religion of ours has, how much beauty, how extraordinary this religion is. And so it astounds me, it confuses me when I find Shia Muslims and Shia youths particularly who are not amazed by their, it's just fascinating to me. Like, how? If I guarantee it, dear brothers and sisters, if you gave even an iota, even a small piece of Islam to non-Muslims and those who have taqwa, good Muslims, they would cherish it. They would be amazed by it. They would be like, wow, if I had had this advice at the beginning of my life, my entire world would have changed. Everything would have gone differently. And this isn't just me saying it, by the way. There's that famous hadith of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam where they said that if you amina the goodness of our speech, they would have followed us. The biggest problem, look, this is the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam speaking. If you gave them the goodness of our speech, let me repeat it. Just think about it, because when I was saying how the scholars are, for example, not doing their duty, you might have seen some of my videos where I'm exposing them. Look, those videos are just the top of the iceberg. That's nothing. There are so many problems which exist in our community that I don't even have time to elaborate on them. But the reality is, as Shia, as a community, we have not functioned the way that we should have. And part of the reason behind that is because we have lacked taqwa. If the people just leave it and reject it entirely, or you have to accept the fact this is the reality. Okay, so I've just been informed that my is a little bit poor. I must be getting a little bit choppy for you guys, and I understand that it takes extra patience for you guys to carry on listening when my internet is cutting out. All right, brilliant. Well, brilliant. Okay, Jazakallah. All right, fantastic. So anyway, a big part of our mission and our purpose, dear brothers and sisters, is not just to learn about Islam, but also to teach it. And you should never think to yourself that, oh, that's the job of the scholars, because the scholars ain't doing it. Trust, what they are doing is it's, and they are entertaining you. For example, them going out to the people, or engaging with the poor people or the oppressed, talking about the youths who are already astray. They're in the streets, they're doing graffiti, they're engaging in all sorts of activities that the rest of the community would say, "Oh, ma, that's so bad." Which scholars do you see actually engaging with that segment of the society? The hope it would do precisely that. In fact, all. And that's where you get all these profound stories about how their initial companions were these brave youths, or and some of them were rich, yes, but many. In a previous session, we also mentioned how many people in the prison systems are those who will hear the truth, and we heard that story in the story of Prophet Yusuf, and of course in the biography of Shahid Malcolm X as well. But these kinds of things are not happening, and so duty upon you as well. Now, taqwa is one of those things that will take you there, because you won't just be learning things in order to teach them. No, you're going to learn things, you're going to apply things to your own life, truly embed them in your heart, and people are going to the realities, right? They are going to not just hear about Islam from you, but they're going to see Islam reflected through all of your actions, right? And so we're supposed to teach people not through our tongues, but through our actions. And there's just one last point to end on, and it's a very poignant and very important point. In the recent year, since around about, yeah, I mean, in the last 2 years, I'd say, we've seen a massive surge of people coming towards Islam. Massive surge of Islam, particularly in the West, but across the world. People who are reading the Quran. It is not just on their shelves. They find it online and they just start to read. Now, what inspired this recent surge? What made them come and read the Quran? They saw the Palestinian cause. They saw it with their own eyes. They saw what the Palestinians were struggling through. They saw that children who had been wounded and their wounds were being tended to, and they're just such awful wounds that you can't, like, for our children, if they fall over and graze their knees, it's pound with pain. These Palestinian children, their legs weren't grazed, their elbows weren't grazed, their limbs were sometimes missing. And in the hospital rooms, when doctors are trying to start to recite the Quran from memory, and because their mind is going towards the Quran, they become a little bit distracted. Imagine they could not afford anesthesia for these children. That's just one example, and I'm sure that you've seen many such videos. The people started to see these such videos, and they were not Muslim, these people who saw these videos, but they wanted to understand, where do these people get their courage from? Where does this spiritual strength come from? And what they were essentially seeing, they don't have a word for what they're seeing, but let me tell you what they're seeing. They were seeing taqwa, its true form, because one who is truly muttaqi can never, ever submit to the tyrants. And so just through visualizing this and seeing this, masses and masses of people wanted to find out what is the secret behind their spiritual strength. They certainly have something, and they started to read the Quran en masse. And the resistance of Palestine, hundreds of thousands And if not, think about what. Put your hands up, throw your questions, your comments at inshallah. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.